Leader of the Senate. Point of order, Senator Albert Basi Akpan.
Thank you, Mr. President. My respected and distinguished colleagues, Mr. President, Senator Albert Basi Akpan, Akwa Ibom Northeast. Mr. President, I come under Order 43. May I please adopt it as read, Mr. President, and go straight to my point of order.
Okay, you may do so.
Mr. President, on behalf of the three senators from Akwa Ibom State, Senator Akune Yagayi and His Excellency Senator Christopher Ekpenyong, Mr. President, we want to bring to the attention of the Senate leadership and this Senate that the recent federal government released intention to open up five airports, five international business airports on the 21st of June is quite commendable. Mr. President, may I bring to the attention of this Senate that Akwa Ibom International Airport is one of the most busy local airports with about 105 flights a week, and that recently the state government ordered additional one aircraft to beef up its fleet, and the intention of this fleet is to cover the northern part of Nigeria. Mr. President, we wish to seek the intervention of this Senate that because of the fact that this airport covers Umuahia, Aba, part of Port Harcourt and Calabar, I think it will be of greater benefit, economic benefit to the people of this region that Akwa Ibom International Airport be included as part of the airport that will be open on the 21st. Reason being that, Mr. President, Akwa Ibom still remains one of the lowest states with the coronavirus infection, and the government is taking definite steps to observe all necessary protocol. Mr. President, may you please direct the Chairman Committee on Aviation to please look at the plea of the people of this region so they are not cut off from the rest of the country. Mr. President, I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator Albert Basi Akpan. The Chairman Aviation, I'm sure, has listened to you. He has taken note of what you have said, and I'm sure that the Ministry of Aviation will do the needful. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate. Point of order. Who is? Somebody said point of order. Oh, okay. Senator Abomoro.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name remains as Senator Abba Moro, representing the very good people of the Benue South Senatorial District. Mr. President, with your leave, I want to come under Order 42, matter of urgent public importance. If you permit, I'll read the order, Mr. President.
Well, I would wish that I permit you, but you didn't tell me what you are going to say. But you can go ahead if it is not something that is controversial. Because if you read the order, it says you are supposed to discuss it with me, but I don't know what it is. I will still say, okay, go ahead, so long as it is not controversial.
Mr. President, the order reads, the matter for discussion shall, if possible, be referred to the President of the Senate before commencement of the day's sitting, and the President of the Senate shall refuse to allow the claim unless he is satisfied that the matter is definite and urgent. 2, if the claim is allowed by the President of the Senate and the leave of the Senate is given by at least 1/5 of all the senators, the matter shall stand over till the next legislative day. Mr. President, only middle of last week, some suspected herdsmen attacked two communities in the Obi local government area of my constituency, and about 13 lives were lost. I visited the communities over the weekend and I saw their distress. And I think, Mr. President, if you permit, and with the indulgence of the Senate, I shall present a motion on that matter in the next legislative day, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much, distinguished Senator Patrick Abumoro. I will put the question. Those in favor of the motion by our distinguished colleague that we allow him to present a motion the next legislative day, which is tomorrow, say aye. Those against say nay. Ayes have it. You present your motion tomorrow. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Augustine Obi Omo Agege on the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Alteration Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Alteration Bill 2020, SB 439, first reading.
1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Alteration Bill 2020, SB 439, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Obi Omo Agege on the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Alteration Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Constitution of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Alteration Bill 2020, SB 440, first reading.
1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria Alteration Bill 2020, SB 440, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Stella Adaeze Odua on the
T20 SB 436, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Degi Eremien Yobio Barakuma on the National Oil and Gas Museum and Research Center, Oloibiri, Bayelsa State Establishment, etc. Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Oil and Gas Museum and Research Center, Oloibiri, Bayelsa State Establishment, etc. Bill 2020, SB 437, first reading.
National Oil and Gas Museum and Research Center, Oloibiri, Bayelsa State Establishment, ETC Bill 2020, SB 437, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Michael Opeyemi Bamidele on the Federal University Oye Ekiti Act, number 2, 2015 Amendment Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal University Oye Ekiti Act, number 2, 2015 Amendment Bill 2020, SB 442, first reading.
Federal University Oye Ekiti Act number 2, 2015 Amendment Bill 2020, SB 442, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the sixth business of the day is the presentation of House Bill in my name on the Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020, HB 835, first reading.
Emergency Economic Stimulus Bill 2020, HB 835, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the seventh business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Committee on Appropriations on the 2020 Appropriation Act Amendment Bill. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Barau Jibrin, Chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Barau Jibrin, Chairman, Appropriations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Barau Jibrin. Mr. President, while we were finishing touches on the computation of the bill, that was on Thursday, then we discovered that out of the 500 billion naira earmarked for intervention in respect of COVID-19 pandemic, only 14 billion is actually captured in the budget, leaving 186 billion that has to do with the health sector. In actual fact, it's captured in the MTEF, but 500 billion captured in the MTEF, but only 314 is captured in the bill itself. And it has to do with the 186 that has been captured has to do with the health sector, which is core. It's fundamental to that intervention because it has to do with the health sector. So we had to draw the attention of the budget office and indeed the minister to this obvious error. Now, in that process, we sat with the budget office, the DG budget office, who was insisting that they thought that since that full amount was captured in the MTEF, there was no need for that 186 to be captured in the full budget, in the appropriation bill. We said, no, that would be against section 80 and 81 of the Constitution. Everything has to be captured in the bill. So we put a call to the minister, explain to the minister that there's a need, if actually they want this money to be spent, there should be a letter telling us to include that into the bill. Then she promised that she was going to send a letter yesterday, and we waited to the end, up to the end of business yesterday. That letter has not come. So we are giving them today, up to the end of close of work. If they don't bring the letter, we will not have any option but to present the bill as as given to us. And probably if they've made up their mind, they can bring supplementary appropriation later. So this is the situation, sir. If they don't bring that, then we'll bring the report. We'll take the report to our printers today. At the end of today, the printers have promised us that they are going to print the report between today and tomorrow. And so we'll be able to get the copies of the printed details and then get it distributed to distinguished senators. And we'll present our report for consideration, presentation for presentation and consideration on Thursday, if the Senate so wish. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, let me make this comment. I will advise those responsible for putting the budget estimates or revise or whatever to be meticulous and to be responsible. The National Assembly cannot be a destination where lack of efficiency in somebody's job will be addressed. We are supposed to have the entire bill presented to us. And you did the right thing by asking and insisting that a letter should be written to specifically address that problem, that there was an omission on their side and they were requesting for the inclusion of 186 billion. We have to insist on this because when we simply put figures without a document supporting the inclusion, somebody will say we are padding the budget. And the National Assembly is castigated and in some cases even insulted. So you did the right thing by asking for a letter to that effect. I believe that the needful will be done by the executive to address this. But when you said you would print the document between today and tomorrow, I think you have to do it today. We must have document printed today. You will lay it tomorrow. We'll make copies. We make copies available to all the distinguished senators tomorrow, and then we'll consider the report on Thursday. Anything short of this will not be acceptable because we are coming to a close of this part of the session. So we need to have the copies of your report printed today, and then you lay it tomorrow, and then we'll distribute copies. You are raising your hand. Distinguished Senator Chukwuka Utazi.
Thank you, Mr. President. What the Chairman's Senate Committee on Appropriation has just said concerns health. And if we go ahead and pass this budget without the 186 billion that concerns the health, it will put the health industry into problems that the operators there would have cost. This is budget office problem. So I'm pleading that we just give the appropriation committee this one day, please.
Thank you very much, Senator Chukwuka Utazi. We are not going to do that because somebody is supposed to do his work well. We can't become the people who will be adding figures here. They will do it. But we have to stick to what is right. We have to stick to what is right. They know, they have done this previously. They will write letters. Senator Denjima Goje, you were once our chairman of appropriations. When there were omissions like this, they will normally write a letter conveying the request to include. So they will do it. Thank you very much, Chairman of Appropriations. So, Leader, I think we stand down the consideration of the receipt of this report.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, given the explanations that we have received from the Chairman Appropriations, I rise to move a motion that this distinguished Senate steps down the receipt of this appropriation bill to another legislative day.
Minority.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say nay. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the eighth business of the day is the presentation of the reports of the Committee on Police Affairs in respect of 1. Police Act Cap P19 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, Repeal and Re-enactment Bill 2020, and 2. Police Academy Establishment, etc. Bill 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Haluru Dauda Jika, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Haluru Dauda Jika.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, Haluru Dauda Jika, representing the Central Senatorial Zone of the oil and gas producing state of Bauchi, Northeast Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise humbly to move that the Senate do receive 2 reports of the Committee on Police Affairs. 1, Police Act Cap P19 Laws of the Federation 2004, Repeal and Reenact Bill 2020, Senate Bill 181. And the second, Police Academy Establishment Act Bill 2020, Senate Bill 182. I so move, distinguished senators.
Senator Yakubu Oseni, please second.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Yakubu Oseni, representing Kogi Central. I rise to support that the Senate do receive a report of Committee on Police Affairs to be considered this morning. Thank you, Mr. President.
I think it's to be late.
Okay, to be late. I so second.
Thank you very much. Those in favor of the motion that the Senate receives the committee report of the Committee on Police Affairs, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Jika, you may lead the report. Thank you very much. But I think Senator Jika, Bochi is not alone in this. Gombe is also involved. Leader of the Senate.
Okay, we will soon join the queue. Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the ninth business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals, Steel Development and Metallurgy on the need for the continuous implementation of policy reforms for the diversification of the Nigerian economy through the solid mineral sector. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the distinguished Senator Umar Tanko Almakura, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Umar Tanko Almakura. No, it's not in. Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Umar Tanko Almakura, Senator representing Nasarawa South. Mr. President, the Senate will recall that in the sitting of Thursday, 14th November 2019, it mandated my committee to organize a round table for the purposes and the need for the continuous implementation of policy reforms for the diversification of the Nigerian economy through the agricultural and mineral sectors. Mr. President, I would like to move that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals, Steel Development and Metallurgy on the need for continuous implementation of the policy reforms for the diversification of the Nigerian economy through the solid mineral sector. I do move, Mr. President.
Senator Kola Balogun, you may second the motion, please. Moved by Senator Umar Tanko Almakura that the Senate receives the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, Kola Balogun, Oyo South. I rise to second the motion as ably moved by my colleague. I so second, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that will receive the report of the Committee on Solid Minerals and Steel Development, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. You may let the report, distinguished Senator Tanko Almakura. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the 10th business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs on the screening of the following persons as listed in the order paper for appointment as members of Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Fiscal Commission. The recommended names are as follows. Number 1, Salamatu Muhammad Bala Adamawa, new appointment. Honorable Alfred Egba Esquire Bayelsa, new appointment. Alhaji Adamu Shetima Yuguda Dibal, Borno, new appointment. Barrister Sir Emmanuel O. Nwosu, Imo, new appointment. Oladele Semiu Boyega, Oshun, new appointment. Bello Abubakar Wamako, Sokoto, new appointment. And Ahmed A. Yusuf, Taraba, new appointment. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Adetumbi Ayodeji Olubunmi, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Olubunmi Adetumbi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Olubunmi Adetumbi, representing Ekiti North. I hereby move the motion that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs on the confirmation of the nominations of the following persons for appointment as members of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RAMFAC, namely Salamatu Muhammad Bala Adamawa, new appointment. Honorable Alfred Egba Bayelsa, new appointment. Alhaji Adamu Shetima Yuguda Diba, Borno, new appointment. Barrister Sir Emmanuel O. Nwosu, Imo, new appointment. Oladele Semiu Boyega, Oshun, new appointment. Bello Abubakar Wamako, Sokoto, new appointment. And Ahmed A. Yusuf, Taraba, new appointment. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Engineer Kabir Barkia.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Engineer Kabir Barkia, Katsina Santara. I rise to support the motion moved in respect of the report of the Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs. I so support. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate receives the report of our Committee on National Planning and Economic Affairs say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. You may lead the report, please. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions on the confirmation of the nominations of the following persons for appointment as non-executive directors of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. Number 1, Mrs. Diana Okonta, non-executive director, South-South. Mrs. Yana Talib Yaro, non-executive director, North-East. The two good senators will recall that the request of Mr. President Commander-in-Chief were referred to the committee on Tuesday, 12th May 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Tuku Senator Obasani, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Senator Dr. Obasani.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Basani. I represent Kaduna Central. I rise to move the motion that the Senate do receive and consider the report of the Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions on the confirmation of the nomination of the following persons for appointment as non-executive directors of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. 1. Mrs. Diana O. Okonta, non-executive director, South-South. 2. Mrs. Yana Talibiaro, non-executive director, Northeast. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Francis Adenigba Fadaunsi, you may second the motion, please.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I like to second the motion as raised by my distinguished senator. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate receives the report of the Committee on Insurance, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. You may let the report. You can present the report now.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I remain Senator Basani, representing Kaduna Central. The Senate, at its sitting on Tuesday, 12 May 2020, considered the report of Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation, for the confirmation of appointments of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta and Mrs. Yana Talibiaro as non-executive directors of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. I refer same to the Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions for further legislative action. Committee's action. The committee requested the Senior Special Assistant to the President on National Assembly matters to furnish it evidence of the academic professional qualifications, Code of Conduct acknowledgement slip of asset declaration, security clearance, and other relevant documents in respect of the nominees. Interaction with the nominees. The nominees appeared before the committee on Wednesday, 3rd June 2020 for their screening exercise. The nominees answered questions that were asked by the members of the committee, particularly as it regards the economic stability during the current period of COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the continuous insurance of bank deposits by the NDIC. They left no one in doubt as to how their experience will assist the corporation in achieving its core mandate and overall objectives. Findings. At the end of the screening exercise of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta and Mrs. Yana Talibiaro, the committee's findings were as follows. 1. That their nominations are in accordance with the provisions of Section 5.2 and 4 of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation Act, 2006. 2. That their nominations are to fill existing vacancies in the NDIC board for Northeast and South-South geopolitical zones, respectively. 3. That the committee do not receive any petition against their nominations for appointments as non-executive directors of the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. That the nominees had been cleared by the police and the Department of State Service, DSS, and possessed the Code of Conduct acknowledgement slip. 5. That the nominees proved to be very conversant with the economic management as well as the workings of NDIC. Recommendations. The Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions, having screened the nominees and being satisfied with their experience, performance, and qualifications, hereby recommends that the Senate do confirm the nomination of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta and Mrs. Yana Talibiaro as non-executive directors of the Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. I so move, Mr. President. The committee wishes to sincerely express its appreciation to the Senate for the opportunity to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Any comments? Leader of the Senate Committee of the Whole. Minority Leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion as moved.
Those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolves into Committee of the Whole to consider the report say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. We'll do approval now. Will the Senate approve the nomination of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta as a non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Will the Senate approve the nomination of Mrs. Yana Talib Yaro as a non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion for this distinguished Senate to resolve into the plenary in order to report progress. I so move.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second the motion that we revert to plenary. I so second.
Those in favor that the Senate reverts to plenary for the charge to report progress say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate in the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the Committee on Banking, Insurance, and Other Financial Institutions on the screening of Mr. President's nominees for appointment as non-executive directors of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC, and approved the nominations of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta as non-executive director from the South-South and Mrs. Yana Talib Yaro as a non-executive director representing Northeast. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Confirmation. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta as non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Mrs. Diana O. Okwanta is hereby confirmed as non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Mrs. Yana Talib Yaro as non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Mrs. Yana Talib Yaro is hereby confirmed as non-executive director of the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, NDIC. Congratulations to both of them. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the second order of the day is the consideration of the report of the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the screening of the following persons as listed in the order paper for appointment as chairman and members of Nigerian Law Reform Commission. Number 1, Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi, Chairman, North Central. Number 2, Hon Ebele Banachima, Commissioner, South East. Number 3, Barrister Basi Dan Abia, Commissioner, South South. Number 4, Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim, Commissioner, Southwest. The Distinguished Senator will recall that the report of the committee was laid on Tuesday, 2nd June 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Distinguished Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, Chairman of our committee, to move the motion for the consideration of the report.
Senator Michael Opeyemi Bamidele.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I'm Michael Opeyemi Bamidele. I represent the Central Senatorial District. Mr. President, I do move that the Senate consider the report of the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the confirmation of the nominations of the following persons for appointment as chairman and members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission, i.e. Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi, Chairman, representing North Central, Honorable Barrister Basi Dan Abia, Commissioner representing South South, Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim, Commissioner representing Southwest. Mr. President, I so move.
Any seconder, please. Yeah, Senator Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, Jeff. I represent Benue Northwest. I rise to second the motion assembly moved by the chairman of the judiciary. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate considers the report of our Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Present the report.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, report of the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the confirmation of the nominations of the chairman and members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. The Senate, distinguished colleagues, will recall at its plenary sitting on Tuesday, 12th May 2020, considered Mr. President's request for the confirmation of the nominations of Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi, North Central, Honorable Ebele Bernard Chima, Southeast, Barrister Basi Dan Abia, South South, and Honorable Muhammad B.O. Ibrahim, Southwest, for appointment as chairman and full-time members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission, and referred same to this committee for further legislative action. It should be noted that these appointments were made pursuant to Section 2, subsections 1 and 2 of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission Act, Cap N118 of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria, which empowers Mr. President in subsection 1 to appoint 4 commissioners and designate one of them as the chairman. Also, subsection 2 provide that the persons so appointed to be full-time commissioners under subsection 1 shall be persons appearing to the National Assembly to be suitably qualified, A, by holding of a high judicial office, B, by experience as a legal practitioner of not less than 12 years standing, or C, by being an eminent scholar in law. After the referral, the committee requested for and received the curriculum vitae and other supporting documents of the nominees and invited them to appear before it for the screening exercise. On Wednesday, 20th May 2020, the nominees appeared before the committee. The committee examined their CV and other supporting documents and thereafter screened them. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the committee interviewed the nominees and received explanations regarding their qualifications, experience, suitability, competence, and integrity to assume the positions of chairman and full-time commissioners of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission, respectively. The nominees were screened in the following order: Professor Mrs. Jumai A.M. Audi, and of course, I will commit the details with respect to this nominee as contained in our report to all our distinguished colleagues to please peruse through to save your time. And then after that, we screen Barrister Basi Dan Abia. Again, I commit his own details as to his qualifications and background to your further studies. Thereafter, we screened Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim. I equally commit the details to distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, I am on page 6 with respect to our observations and findings. The committee, after the screening exercise, deliberated on the nominees' suitability for appointment as chairman and full-time members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission, and hereby makes the following observations and findings. 1, that the appointments of the nominees satisfy the requirement of Section 2, subsections 1 and 2 of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission Act, Cap N118 Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, and the Senate Standing Orders 2015 as amended. 2, that the nominee possess the requisite qualifications, leadership qualities, and comportment to discharge the statutory duties and functions of the offices of the chairman and members of the commission. 3, that there is no petition against the nominations of any of the nominees. 4, that there are no adverse reports against the nominees, as record checks and other forms of investigation by security agencies did not reveal any negative trace against them. 5, that the committee is satisfied about their qualifications, experience, suitability, competence, and integrity to assume the position of chairman and full-time commissioners of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. And 6, that the nominees are fit and proper persons for the appointment. As to our general observation, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it should be stated that this committee wrote the Presidential Liaison Officer on National Assembly Matters, Senate, and requested him to present the nominees for screening. However, the committee observed that one of the nominees, Honorable Ebele Benachima, Commissioner Designate representing Southeast, was not presented to the committee for the screening exercise. Accordingly, the screening of the nominee was deferred. Recommendation. The Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters has scrutinized the curriculum vitae and other accompanying documents of the nominees and recommends thus that the Senate do approve the confirmation of the nominations of Professor Jumai A.M. Audi, Barrister Basi Dan Abia, and Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim for appointment as chairman and full-time members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. Mr. President, I so move.
Any comments? Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, I rise to move a motion for this distinguished Senate to resolve in committees of the whole to consider the report. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that the Senate resolves into committee of the whole to consider the report, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Distinguished colleagues, will do approval Will the Senate approve the nomination of Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi as chairman of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Will the Senate approve the nomination of Barrister Abasi Dan Abia as member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Will the Senate approve the nomination of Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim as a member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Will the Senate approve the deferment of the nomination of Honorable Ebele Barnard Chima as a member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I rise to move the motion for this distinguished Senate to revert to plenary to report progress.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Those in favor of the motion that the Senate reverts to plenary for the chair to report progress say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The Senate and the Committee of the Whole considered the report of the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the screening of Mr. President's nominees for appointment as chairman and members of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission and approved the nominations of 1. Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi, Chairman, North Central Zone. 2. Barrister Basi Dan Abia as Commissioner, South-South. 3. Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim as Commissioner, Southwest. And the Senate stood down the approval of the nomination of Honorable Ebele Barnard Chima representing Southeast. Is this a true reflection of what transpired in the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. Confirmation. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi as chairman of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes. The nomination of Professor Mrs. Jummai A.M. Audi is hereby confirmed as chairman of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. Will the Senate confirm the nomination of Barrister Basi Dan Abia as member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Barrister Basi Dan Abia is hereby confirmed as member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. And finally, will the Senate confirm the nomination of Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim as member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission? Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The nomination of Honorable Mohammed B.O. Ibrahim is hereby confirmed as a member of the Nigerian Law Reform Commission. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Congratulations to the nominees. Leader of the Senate.
You, Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the second reading of the Nigerian Local Content Development Regulation Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, 9th May 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Teslim Folari to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Teslim Folari.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my highly respected colleagues. Mr. President, it is my honor and privilege to lead this debate on the Nigerian Local Content Development Enforcement Bill 2020. Mr. President, this bill was read the first time in this adult chamber on Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Mr. President, the proposed bill seeks to consolidate on the gains made in implementing local content in the oil and gas industry pursuant to the enactment of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Nordic Act 2010 and providing the legal framework for the implementation of local content in other key sectors of the economy, including power, ICT, construction, transport, etc., etc. Mr. President, the bill further provides the legal basis for the enforcement of Presidential Executive Order 003 and 005 on local content. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the Nordic Act 2010 has brought tremendous changes to the way business is conducted in the oil and gas sector. The gains we have made in developing local capacities and capabilities, retaining industry spend, increasing industry contribution to the national GDP, and facilitating access of Nigerian-made goods and services to regional markets have opened our eyes to what we can achieve by providing necessary legal instruments needed for the local content development in all sectors of the economy. Therefore, Mr. President, this bill embodies the legal framework to replicate and extend these principles for development of Nigerian content embodied in Nordic Act 2010 to other sectors of the economy beyond oil and gas. The executive arm of government, Mr. President, has recognized the importance of local content to its economic growth plan, as clearly demonstrated by the signing of the Executive Orders 003 and 005 on local content by Mr. President in 2019. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, one question that arose during the stakeholders' engagement in the preparation of this bill was, why not have a single local content law that addresses the entire Nigerian economy? The reason for separating this bill from the Nordic Act is in recognition of the peculiarities of oil and gas, which remains the bedrock of the nation's economy and needs a specialized legislation compared to other sectors. Any attempt to distort the current governance structure in the Nordic Act may prove counterproductive for Nigeria, as it will create additional responsibilities that will end up making the Nordic Act ineffective and reverse the gains we have made since its enactment in 2010. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the objectives of the Nigerian Local Content Development and Enforcement Bill 2020 are to address the low level of Nigerian content in all contracting arrangements to be executed by all federal government ministries, departments and agencies in all sectors of the economy, to monitor wide industry spend and promote expansion of the portion that is delivered to Nigerian companies and people, to create a regulatory mechanism to monitor compliance by all players, to enhance development of capacity of Nigerian companies and create linkages between various sectors of the economy, to transfer technology and knowledge to Nigerians and Nigerian companies and domesticate production activities in Nigeria. The bill, Mr. President, is structured in line with the following guiding principles. A, it introduced procedures used to achieve major gains in local content implementation in the oil and gas sector. B, it recognizes the fact that government is overstretched with too many agencies and therefore sought to rely on existing structures of government to implement local content. C, ministers of government who are responsible for implementing government policies in the sectors have been given additional responsibility for ensuring local content is achieved in all their transactions. D, a local content development committee is created and headed by the Vice President to drive policy direction on local content. E, the public procurement policy will be relied upon to make local content compliance a requirement for granting of certificate of no objection to procuring entities. F, each sector will be required to set local content targets in its procurement of goods, services, and manpower, and this will be well reflected in procurement planning, advertisement, bid evaluation, and vendor selection. And G, approvals for award of contracts by the Federal Executive Council will, upon enactment of the bill, require a Nigerian content compliance certificate. Mr. President, the proposed bill, when it becomes law, will provide the following socio-economic benefits. 1, reduce capital flights through local production of equipment, machinery, raw materials, spares, chemicals, fertilizer, ICT hardware, and software, etc. B, harness young talents' innovative potentials towards homegrown technology development. C, foster stronger oversight by the legislature on commitment of the executive to promote patronage of locally made goods in public procurement. D, address security challenges through job opportunities and wealth creation. And E, achieve economic diversification, rapid industrialization, and non-oil sector contribution to GDP through local processing of mineral and agricultural resources. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the bill is divided into 13 parts. Part 1 provides for the objectives, application, and scope of the bill, while Part 2 deals with the stipulation for establishment of Nigerian Content Department in each ministry, department, and agency, the powers of the department, their main personnel, and the structure and workings of the department. Part 3 deals with the requirement for submission of Nigerian Content Plan by all contractors applying for pre-qualification and the issues surrounding evaluation and utilization of the plan, as well as the issuance of consideration of Nigerians with respect to contracting and employment, while Part 5 deals with issues relating to the requirement for subcontracting of contracts to Nigerian companies. Part 6 provides for standardization of the raw materials, goods, and services and related issues, while Part 7 make provisions for capacity development of Nigerian companies, issues relating to succession, planning, and modalities for technology transfer. Part 8 provides for modification of the process of issuance of work permits and expatriate quotas to streamline the process and avoid the pitfalls and shortcomings of the subsisting arrangements. while Part 9 deals with the quality of local materials for procurement to ensure that standard of goods supplied by Nigerians are fit and proper for use for which they have been supplied. Part 10 deals with engagement of Nigerian service providers, including firms providing insurance, legal and financial services, and related matters. Part 11 of the bill provides for the establishment of the Nigerian Content Fund in each department in charge of the Nigerian content in each MDA, as well as how the fund will be managed and utilized. Part 12 deals with issues related to content development committees and the modus operandi, while Part 13 contains miscellaneous provisions relating to offenses and penalties, education, as well as legislative oversight. In line with our Standing Order 77.3, Mr. President, this bill does not have any financial implication on the government as the structures for the operations are already in place. Finally, Mr. President, our experience as a country under this COVID-19 scenario has further exposed our weak productive base, and we must all collectively work towards bequeathing a safe and productive country for our citizens. In doing this, we are mindful of cost of governance, and we did not fall into the temptation of creating a new agency to implement local content in the non-oil sectors of the economy. We chose to propose a legislative framework, Mr. President, that enables existing institutions of government to be the implementing pillar of this novel bill. Mr. President, I count on your support in passing this bill. Thank you.
Senator Surajuddin Basiru Ajibola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleague, my name is Dr. Surajuddin Ajibola Bashiru. I represent the people of Osun Central Senatorial District in the state of Osun. First and foremost, I want to commend the promoter of this very important bill, my leader, Senator Teslim Plenary. The lead debate, with respect, is well articulated. And I will say that what one needs to do is to urgently urge this Senate to urgently allow this to go for further legislative processing. And I will say, for instance, the challenge that the COVID-19 has thrown on our country is the fact that we need to be self-sustaining in our production. The way we can be self-sustaining is to develop local capacity in terms of manpower development, in terms of utilization of local materials, and in terms of ensuring that our foreign exchange is reserved for what would not be able to produce locally. The challenge of our economy is also that of capital flight, even in areas where we ought to have comparative advantage economically. A situation whereby even at eateries, you have expatriates serving food in our restaurants. You have expatriates doing jobs that ordinary Nigerians can do. Without legislative intervention to address this, we will be doing injustice to our society. And of course, in terms of galvanizing development, we need to ensure that we conserve our foreign resources to be able to address the balance of trade relationship with other countries. So I will say that this bill in itself justifies that. And I will also say that this is also coming from the experience that we have had in the local content in the context of the oil and gas sector. But yes, the oil and gas sector is vital to our society, but a lot of our resources that we even get from oil and gas sector goes to manufacturing, go to areas in terms of public infrastructure. And these resources are just filtered away because of lack of development of local content. I will say that this bill is long overdue and there should be given accelerated consideration and legislative action. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Deputy Senate Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Robert Agaiborofis, Senator representing Ondo North Senatorial District. I rise to support this bill of the Nigerian Local Content Development Enforcement Bill. I'm particularly happy that this bill will take care of transfer of technology. we are mostly a consumer economy. And the only way we can transform to a production economy is if we are able to learn the means of production through science and technology. Most countries have laws against transfer of technology because it's a proprietary issue. They are not allowed to transfer technology. The only way we can get this is what we call know-how transfer, and it's through partnership with companies that want to establish in Nigeria. And with this local context, it becomes imperative for them to include in it a condition for knowledge or for technology transfer. So I think it's very important for us. It's not only in the area of issues of contract, but the important thing is the know-how transfer. And this we can gradually become a productive economy. This is what China did. Most of the industries in China are established by the Western countries. But gradually, China mastered the means of production through the technology transfer. And today, that is why people ask, what is it that is not made in China? They have become the largest economy. I therefore support this bill, and I also want to appeal to my colleagues to support the bill. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Vinos Dodero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Venus Daudearo, Adamawa South. I rise to support the lead debate on this bill, Nigeria Local Content Development Enforcement Bill 2020. I'm doing so because we have seen the effect of the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act, and there's a need to extend the enforcement of local content to all other industries. We have seen in this country where foreigners come in, they establish industries, and the tendency is for them to bring content from their home countries. If we do not take steps to safeguard our industries, we are going to have problems. So it is on this note that I'm supporting this bill, because if you look at agriculture, for example, or mining, you find that foreigners come in and they dominate that industry. They bring their own workers from their own country. We have seen this happening in other countries. If we are not proactive and take steps to protect our industries, then we are going to allow foreigners to take control of our industry. So it is very important, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, for us to support this bill because it is necessary for us to protect our industries. I so submit. Thank you.
Senator Brown Gober. Senator Brown Gober.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, distinguished colleagues. Distinguished colleagues, I rise to support this bill because of its importance. If you look at the content of the bill itself, it's so nice and well structured in the sense that it is to give the legal framework for the enforcement of the presidential executive order. And if this is done, we believe that the Nigerian engineers that have so far been shortchanged will now have the opportunity to move ahead and technologically advance the country. And this will certainly generate employment. It will also increase industrialization and then the technological advancement as mentioned. And therefore, the bill is so important because at the end of the day, you find that Nigerians can now have access to their own percentage of the local content and then therefore continue to introduce ways and methods by which employment will be generated, and then at the same time industrialization will take its place in this country. So I therefore support this one, and I also employ all our colleagues to please support this bill because of its importance. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Senator Degibio Brokoma.
Mr. President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues, Senator Degi Biobarakuma Iranian is the name. I rise to also commend the chairman of the Committee on Local Content, Senator Folaren, for this bill is well thought out and so timely. When I looked at the title of the lead debate, I was a bit jolted because I did not see the exception of the oil and gas industry in this local content development and enforcement bill. But from the other paper, it is so clearly stated, and I am excited about it. It is very important, my distinguished colleagues. It will be paying lip service to the old talk and gist about diversification of this, our economy. If we continue to focus on oil and gas from time to time, in practical terms, I feel that the development of local content in other sectors outside the oil and gas industry is a practical step that we are taking to ensure that other sectors of the economy are developed and to make contribution to the growth and development of our national economy. Oil and gas sector is highly technical and professional sector. And I am happy that we are not lumping up these other sectors with the oil and gas industry. We are aware that these other sectors are quite young and require appropriate focus and concentration to develop the enforcement. We are blessed as a country, so much blessed with natural resources in the mining sector, in agric, and other sectors. But because we have decided to focus on only oil and gas, that these sectors are not being developed. It is very unfortunate. But I'm happy that in this nice Senate, our focus is also on the development of the other sectors of the economy. So formulating a bill on the enforcement of local content in other sectors, I believe will rapidly transform our economy, develop local capacity in the industrialization of this, our economy, by raising very competent, capable industrialists in other sectors and contribute to the development of the Nigerian economy. It is on this note that I strongly lend my voice to this bill, and I also urge my colleagues to support this lead debate and get it eventually passed at the end of the day. It is in our collective interest, and Nigerians will truly know that we are determined and practically have the capacity and the will to drive this process through. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that this bill be now read a second time say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to enact the Nigerian Local Content Act to provide for the development, regulation, and enforcement of the Nigerian content in all sectors of the Nigerian economy, except in the oil and gas sector and other matters related therewith, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to enact the Nigerian Local Content Act to provide for the development, regulation, and enforcement of Nigerian content in all sectors of the Nigerian economy except in the oil and gas sector and other matters related there with 2020 second reading taken. The bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Local Content Development report by within 4 weeks. Well done, Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the third order of the day is the second reading of Erosion Control and Prevention Commission Establishment, etc. Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, 26 November 2019. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Ifeanyi Uba to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Senator Patrick Ifeanyi Uba.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Patrick Ifeanyi Uba, representing the good people of Anambra South. Lead debate on the bill for an act to establish the Erosion Control and Prevention Commission 2020. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, it is with great humility that I wish to thank you for this great privilege to lead the debate on the general principles on the bill for an act to establish the Erosion Control and Prevention Commission and for other matters connected herewith 2019. This is all-important bill and was read for the first time in this Hollow Chamber on Tuesday, 26 November 2019. Nigeria plagued by numerous environmental problems of different degrees. Almost every part of the country is characterized by one environmental problem or the other. But however, the menace of erosion is arguably the severest in terms of devastation and destruction. For instance, in 2012, flooding in Ibadan, Oyo State, the coastal erosion in Lagos, Bayelsa, and Rivers State, and in almost all parts of Anambra State. It's also very important to note that gully erosion is almost taking over the entire landmass of the southeast and south-south. The problem of erosion is more catastrophic in the southeastern part of Nigeria. While desertification is in the north, but with the enactment of the Green Wall Act by the National Assembly, the act of desertification was laid to rest. In the southern part of the country, erosion is responsible for the widespread destruction of transportation and communication systems, degradation of arable land, contamination of water supply, isolation of settlements, and mitigation of communities. From available statistics, Mr. President, more than 3,500 gullies occurred in the southeastern part of Nigeria alone. These gullies are formed by surface runoff from localized rainfall events of high intensity in the fine turquoise, green, sand, and sandstones. The localized removal of sands, of soils, soil sediments, and poorly consolidated sedimentary rocks by running waters is augmented by process of mass movement to form steep-sided drains. The gully forming processes ultimately yield a degraded badland terrain comprising nice-edged ridges separated by deep ravines and no longer amenable to agricultural use. This calls for a concerted effort to tackle the menace through the commission for which this bill seeks to establish. Several causes could be cited for the processes of erosion in Nigeria, but what is most disturbing is the fact that there is no coordinated and sustained effort by various levels of government to counter both the processes as well as the consequences of this problem. Mr. President, distinguished senators, it is disheartening to note that the World Bank, in a survey it carried out in Nigeria in 1990, established the reality that erosion is one of the three main environmental problems facing Nigeria. The study stressed that gully erosion caused damage with an annual cost to the nation estimated at 800 billion naira. The Erosion Control Commission Bill is therefore an effort to evolve an organization that will streamline and coordinate the various strategies to combat the evolution of erosion. When established, the Commission will specify roles of governments, local communities, and land users, incorporate long-term strategies and preventive measures. The Commission will also marshal and utilize preventive measures. The Commission will also marshal and utilize resources for the purpose of combating the surge as it is done in other countries. The establishment of such important commission is prohibited, anchored on, but not limited to the following reasons, Mr. President. One, to carry out an intensive survey of the extent of erosion in the country, manage, control, redress, and prevent gully erosion in the country, formulate policies and guidelines for the prevention, control, and management of erosion in the country, coordinate and cooperate and promote research activities relating to erosion control, management, and prevention, and coordinate and promote research activities relating to erosion control, management, and prevention. Okay. Finally, monitor the state of preparedness in all organizations and agencies which may contribute to the control of gully erosion. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, it is a known fact that erosion is a great menace in some part of Nigeria. This has constituted a great environmental hazard over the years, thereby impacting negatively on plants, animals, and human existence. You may recall that the commencement of the 8th Senate, several motions were entertained bordering on the road destruction caused by menace of erosion. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, there is need for coordination of major policies for effective preventive control and management approaches in order to arrest the situation in the affected states and prevent the process of it extending into other neighboring states. Similarly, it's important that we evolve the necessary intervention that will anchor and focus the effort being made to shake erosion menace in the country. The promotion of this bill, in my humble contribution, to correct these problems in order to protect and conserve the environment. It is also to bring succor to millions of Nigerians devastated by this menace. It will create more comprehensive risk-based regime for managing the risk of flooding and erosion, which for the first time embraces all sorts of flooding. It will also enable better management of water resources and quality. It will equally help us to manage and respond to several weather events such as flood and drought, which are said to become more frequent as a result of climate change. And it will ensure that those managing the risk of flood or gullies erosion will take account of other concerns such as sustainability, biodiversity, protection of ecosystem, and the whole water cycle in their day-to-day activities. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, there is no better time than now to have a legacy for Nigeria. The menace of erosion has, in its trail, caused serious economic hardship and poverty on Nigerians. Families are rendered homeless, villages displaced, and yet ecological fund targeted at addressing this problem stands misdirected. There is dire need for adequate management of these funds. Hence, they call for the establishment of this commission. In line with our Order 77 subsection 3 of the financial implication is attached. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, I urge you all to support this bill in order to create a sustainable environment for Nigerians. Thank you for your attention.
Senator Uche Okunefe.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Uche Lilian Okunefe. Mr. President, I come from Anambra State. I represent Anambra Central. Mr. President, I commend my brother, Dr. Senator Ifeanyi for coming up with this bill. Mr. President, even though I have a similar bill, Ecological Fund Agency Commission, this is almost like the same bill. Mr. President, erosion menace is what is ravaging a lot of states. And if we do not have an agency that can coordinate the activities of erosion menace in this country, it will continue to eat up our land mass. Mr. President, in the southeast alone, most of our land mass have been taken over by erosion menace. We have ocean surge in the southwest. We have deforestation in the north. We have desert encroachment. We have oil spill. We have pollution and all of that. We need to have a coordinated approach to fight the land degradation in Nigeria. Many people don't even know that they need to build their houses based on the topography of that area. The way our people are doing sand mining in Nigeria is creating a lot of environmental degradation and erosion menace in the respective states. If we have an agency that their work and mandate will be to coordinate the activities of erosion and environmental challenges in the country, it will help us to save our land. It will help us also check the environmental degradation and the environmental devastation. So, Mr. President, this agency is very, very important. It is also an agency that I believe that will, of course, harness the activities of Ecological Fund Office. As it is now, the office is just a warehouse where so many activities are happening without anybody taking full control of. So I support this, and I want my colleagues to also lend their support to this. Thank you.
Senator Smart. Senator Smart Adeyemi.
Mr. President, I rise to commend my brother for his concern for the erosion problem confronting the country, particularly the Southeast. I stand, Mr. President, to say that I'm privileged to have traveled around this country, and I do believe that more than any zone, the Southeast is one zone that has been threatened by erosion problem, more than any other zone in Nigeria. And I think, Mr. President, there is the need for special consideration in facing the problem of erosion in the Southeast. Virtually every local government and state of the Southeast is threatened by erosion. From Aba to Ihala to Ikeduru, Ata, up to Okija, Nnewi, Enugu, up to Ebonyi. It's been threatened by erosion. So, Mr. President, I believe that there's a need for special attention to be given for confronting erosion problem in the Southeast. But having said this, Mr. President, I hold the view that it will not be appropriate to be talking about setting up another commission, taking a look at the problems confronting our nation today. More importantly, Mr. President, we have the special fund, ecological fund, erosion problem in the southeast. We're talking about a new commission now, Mr. President, when Nigeria is talking about reducing the number of parastatals and agencies of government. Taking a look at, in the next 3 years, what Nigeria believe in as the main source of revenue, oil, is no longer going to be fashionable. We must be looking at how we are going to cut down costs so that we can manage our affairs better. Having another commission now, Mr. President, it will negate the current discussion of reducing the number of agencies of federal government. I think we should agree here that there's need for us to pay special attention to the problem of erosion in Southeast. If you have visited any part of the Southeast, you will agree absolutely that it's a serious problem. And any problem confronting any part of this nation, all of us must be concerned. But I hold the view, Mr. President, that it is not expedient to talk about setting up a commission solely for addressing the problem of erosion. As also me, Mr. President.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Robert Borges. I'm representing Ondo North Senatorial District. I again want to congratulate my distinguished colleague for bringing up this problem confronting the Southeast. I have had the opportunity to travel around in the Southeast. I've seen places like Agalanaka, gorgeous, very terrible, the menace. The erosion problem there is so devastating. Villages have been destroyed, roads, farmland. So it's a serious problem. But Mr. President and the second colleagues, I think we have a ecological fund, and the act that established the ecological fund can be amended to accommodate the special need of the Southeast. I don't think it is expedient, just like my colleague said, at this time, to begin to establish another commission solely for erosion in Southeast. We are currently looking at ways to cut down overhead costs in running our economy. Right now, we are spending about 60% of the budget on the current budget, on the current issues. So adding another commission solely addressing erosion in Southeast, I don't think it is going to be in the interest of our economy. However, having said this, I believe that the ecological fund can be amended to accommodate the special need of the Southeast in the area of tackling erosion. I haven't said it, Mr. President. I hope this will be taken into consideration in this debate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Senator Rochoso.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Owele Anayo Rochas Okrocha, Senator, Imo West. Mr. President, I rise to support this very auspicious bill for the control and prevention of erosion in this country. I've listened to my colleagues, the Deputy Senate Leader, who spoke up on cutting down the cost of governance, and hence there might not be need for this commission. Let me emphasize here, and distinguished Senator Smart also alluded to that. Mr. President, There's one silent point that is not being expressed here, that this commission seeks to prevent erosion in this country, not particularly Southeast. Though Southeast becomes the ones that are heavily affected, but talking about prevention. And I like this popular word that says prevention is better than cure. Mr. President, if you are aware of billions of dollars that has been expended in tackling erosion in this country, then you agree with me that this bill is apt and urgent. As a governor, when I was a governor, I said as a governor then, there was a village called Uruala, my maternal place. And the World Bank approved sum of 9.7 billion naira to tackle that erosion in that village. That's a World Bank assistance. And I think if I had used 9.7 billion, I can build houses for the entire village and give them schools and water and this. But if that erosion had been controlled, that 9.7 billion wouldn't have been necessary. This is why, while I agree with the deputy leader, that this commission will even help in cutting down the cost of governance. Because in preventing it, we save money. And nowadays, some of the problems we have is that nature is fighting back. Whether we call it coronavirus or diseases, nature is fighting back the humans because of our way of life. People nowadays build along the natural waterways, therefore blocking the natural waterways, and water must find an alternative route to follow. This will be a duty of this commission to take a study nationwide on what can be done to prevent this erosion. So it's not something that necessarily will be given as a Minister of Environment, or what they suggested that we should look for more money. Looking for more money will not cut down the cost of governance, but preventing it will help. So I rise to support Senator Ifeanyi on this nice and well-articulated bill. Thank you.
Senator Mohamed Adamalero.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I remain Mohamed Adamalero, representing the good people of Kebbi Central. Mr. President, I rise to also speak on this bill. First and foremost, erosion is a general phenomenon affecting virtually every state of the Federation. However, it is more prevalent in the southeast, while the southern part of the country we have the coastal erosion, which is equally devastating and is degrading to the environment. In the lead presentation, my good friend Senator Ifeanyi Ubah has made an allusion that let me read. The issue of desertification was laid to rest by passing the Green Wall Act. Mr. President, you know very well, and my colleagues know very well, that nothing has been laid to rest. The issue of desert encroachment or desertification or deforestation is even more devastating and more serious now than ever before. Nigeria is losing almost 8 kilometers every year to desert encroachment. So the so-called Greenwell Act that has been passed by the National Assembly has not been implemented. The Ministry of Environment was given the sole responsibility of doing the green work, but nothing has happened. I support the idea of gully erosion, coastal erosion. But Mr. President, we already have agencies that are responsible for the control of gully erosion and coastal erosion. Every year, state governors do submit detailed report of erosion control measures that need to be done
in their various states to Ecological Fund Office. Ecological Fund Office is charged with the responsibility of coming up with measures that can control erosion, whether it is coastal erosion or gully erosion. So creating a commission will be a burden on government. Government is already thinking of how to reduce cost of governance. We all read about Orasanya report, which this government is all out to implement. Reducing the cost of governance, merging some agencies that have overlapping functions. So if we create a commission, it will be a duplication and it will be a waste of resources. Therefore, don't support that. But instead, I fully support the idea of coming up with measures that can control erosion, whether it is in the southeast or in the south-south. And I equally support measures that can control, desertification, particularly in the northern part of the country. If you don't control the desert, Mr. President, it will start moving from where it is in Yobe and Kebbi down to Kogi, down to Ondo, and down to Lagos. So it is a menace that has to be tackled, head on. And this Senate has all it takes to do that by coming up with strong legislation that can give the executive the power to do that. Mr. President, that's my case. Thank you very much.
Finally, Senator Francis Adenigba Fadausi.
Mr. President, I rise to support strongly the creation of Erosion Commission, Control Commission. If we look at, firstly, my name is Senator Francis Adenigba Fadausi, representing the good people of Osun State. If you look at the lead presentation, one has to give kudos to the man who proposed this commission establishment. He said the commission is not for intervention, like either NEMA or the Ecological Fund, but for the formulation of policies against erosion and against all these adverse effects of erosion, to carry out an extensive survey of the extent of erosion in the country, which has not been done properly. We don't even know how many gullies, how many erosion sites we have. Manage, control, redress, and prevent gully erosion in the country, which others have not been doing. Their own is when it happens, they intervene. They send the minister there, they send relief items there. But this one is to control it and formulate policy. There are no enough policy to guide this. Coordinate and promote research activities relating to erosion control, management, prevention, and so on. Then monitor the state preparedness of all organizations and so on. If you notice of recent, the states have been coming every year. The governors will come. They are looking for ecological fund. In the long run, by the time we go there, you will see that the erosion problems persist. This one has gone beyond the level of state government, which the federal government has to come in now to formulate a policy through a strong permission, backed by our laws. Eventually, you see a lot being committed by these state governments in the mining site. If you go to Zamfara, you see a lot of mining site that has constituted a lot of menace into the society there. Go to, it's not only in the east we are having erosion. We have a lot in the southwest too. In the south, we have a lot. Mining site enough will give you a lot of headache when you see them. All the cocoa farms have been dug by these mining people from up country. that are really degrading the something. By the time you get there and you see a lot of erosion, taking away all the farmland, including the east and the southeast, this thing need an emergency committee that we have to look into it wholeheartedly and support the motion. With this and others, I support the mover and we crave your indulgence to support the creation that will not go at variance with what is on ground. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the Erosion Control Prevention Commission and vest it with the responsibility for the prevention, control, management, and redress of erosion and for related matters 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the Erosion Control Prevention Commission and vest it with the responsibility for the prevention, control, management, and redress of erosion and for related matters 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Ecology and Climate Change. Really? Not environment? It should be environment. The bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Environment. To report back within 4 weeks. Distinguished colleagues, thank you for the various interventions, but let me say that the debate is really whether or not the erosion menace is affecting various communities in our country. The debate tended to sway into whether we need a commission or not. Whether we need a commission or not, the fact is we have to address the ecological challenges we have in the country. If we have gully erosion that is eating the lands in various parts of the country, especially in the southeast, then we have to do something, whether it is a commission or not a commission. And I believe that there are other ecological challenges in other parts of the country, like Senator Mohammed Ali said, or one of our colleagues, that coastal erosion is also a strong challenge at the Nigerian coastal environments. Just like desertification is a big problem in the northernmost part of the country. I want to say that the Green Wall program or project actually is not desertification control. It's simply afforestation. Desertification control should be much more comprehensive than that. Similarly, when you have gully erosion, it's not just to go and stop the erosion, but there are other things that you need to do beyond stopping it, because communities' livelihoods are affected. So you need to have something comprehensive, and I believe that as representatives of the people, we should be looking at how do we really deal with these issues. The Ecological Fund Office is there. Do we transform through legislation the Ecological Fund Office, instead of just leaving money there and then sometimes we know where the money goes to non-ecological issues? This was proved before. Can we make the Ecological Fund Office to be responsible for all the ecological issues and then take it as one institution that will be addressing desertification and other ecological issues like gully erosion and so on and so forth? Can we do that in the light of the arguments some of our colleagues raised, or do we need separate agencies to address the various issues? But we must ensure that government attends to these ecological problems because people are affected. Definitely, like Senator Okorocha said, people lose their lands, lose their property, lose their villages, and so on and so forth. And this is not something that we should be arguing whether we need a commission or not, but how do we address the problem as quickly as possible to safeguard our communities. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the fifth order of the day is the second reading of the National Transport Commission Establishment, etc. Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Thursday, 28 May 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Distinguished Senator Buhari Abdul Fattah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Buhari Abdul Fattah, Oyo North. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to lead the debate on the National Transport Commission bill, which was read for the first time in this Allo chamber on Thursday, 28 May 2020. The bill seeks to establish National Transport Commission to regulate and coordinate activities of both public and private service providers in the transportation industry, in accordance with the international best practices for the benefit of wide spectrum of interest, groups, and stakeholders. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the transportation service sector in Nigeria has been largely uncoordinated and lacking in direction for decades. The somewhat chaotic business order which is to prevail in the sector has resulted in the perpetration of all manners of violation, which have manifested in several adverse effects on the national economy. Each capital flight, collapse of industry, the rendering of poor quality services, and blatant perpetuity of other unfair trade practices. The proposed National Transport Commission bill is an instrument designed to establish the regulatory framework for the operation of Nigerian transport sector as an economic regulator. The main responsibility of the economic regulator in this industry will be to play a leading role in the transport regulatory reform nationally and to protect consumers of transport service by ensuring that the services are fairly priced, available, reliable, and safe. Economic regulation enhances the development of an efficient and self-oriented transportation system that met the nation's need. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, it is instructive to note that countries like Canada, Australia, England, Kenya, Ghana, and some states in the United States have established similar transport commissions to perform the roles stated above. Most other developed and developing countries have one agency or the other performing such roles. To this end, the Commission is conferred with the power of A, standardizing tariff charges and other fees on transportation services rendered, monitoring operational standards with regard to infrastructure and facilities, encouraging and brokering public-private partnerships, leveraging a variety of incentives that will enhance the investment portfolio of the transportation sector. For the purpose of accomplishing this duty imposed on the proposed commission under this bill, a directorate is established for each of the core aspects of the transportation sector and proposed regulatory regime. They include the port administration, marine administration, legal, regulatory and logistic department, finance and commercial department, and many others. The mentioned core sectors and development are to be headed and coordinated by seasoned, experienced members of the board of directors appointed in consonance with the provision of this bill. Furthermore, provisions are made for the establishment of 6 zonal operational offices and such other branch offices as the board may consider necessary to enable proper and efficient application of the regulatory regime prescribed under this bill. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, for emphasis and as I conclude this presentation, I wish to emphasize the main aim of this bill, which is to set up a regulatory body that will promote efficiency in rendering of transportation services in a bid to improve economic growth. Its purpose is to create a level playing field for all investors and participants, including casualty of past inefficiency within the transportation sector and birth of a new business environment where renewed zeal, vigor, spirit, and determination to succeed in participant will be the norms. A central body outside the ministry is needed to develop and implement regulatory and code, financial as well as operational, to govern and guarantee effectiveness, efficiency in the sector. The civil service structure, with its tendency of red tape, has never been the ideal vehicle for driving dramatic populist change in a society like ours, which is desperately in need of developmental. That is why a special purpose vehicle responsible to the ministry but not directly controlled by it in the mold of this commission is better placed to make the desired and sustainable impact in the shortest possible time. In line with Senate Standing Order 77.3, after the passage of this bill, the commission will generate more funds and provide employment opportunity for its citizens. Finally, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I urge you all to give your support to this bill. While this is not appropriate time to look back in reproach, it is most certainly the time to look forward to an era of prosperity for allied services and businesses in transportation sector. Our support of the proposed commission must result in the coordinated and easy movement of goods and services around the country, which must in turn result in the economic development of this nation. The passage of this bill will display unflinching commitment to this Senate to lending critical thought and consider action towards repositioning the Nigerian transport sector for growing challenges in the 21st century. Mr. President, I need to inform you that this is one of the two bills we passed at the last assembly, and the President sent it back for us to amend some clauses, about 7 or 8, which you set up a committee on it, which the clauses have been amended together with the Judiciary Committee. I so move. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I rise just to add further explanation to what the chairman of the Transport Committee has already started explaining, that this is not a new bill. This is one of the economic efficiency and regulatory bills, that were brought up and deliberated on in the 8th Senate. And the bill went through second reading, went to public hearing, and third reading was done. There were both the two chambers considered it, and then it was taken to the president. The president made some observations and returned it back. About 2 or 3 observations, I think, because I was a member of the committee which was set up at the 8th Senate to look at this and other bills of the type. And with the legal department, we looked at the issues in that bill and made some adjustments as suggested by the president. So we are just bringing it back, so that it follows the normal legislative procedure, so that we can now hand it back to the committee to bring it back to this Senate's consideration for a third reading. So really, I don't think this is a new issue that will demand further debate, unless there are some very sensitive matters that some of our colleagues may want to raise. I just want to provide...
Okay, let me ask, in the light of what the leader has said, do we really need to take it through the mill again, or we can refer it to the committee? So I'll put the question. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the National Transport Commission as an independent multi-modal economic regulator for the transport industry and for other related matters, 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to provide for the establishment of the National Transport Commission as an independent multimodal economic regulator for the transport industry and for other related matters, 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Land Transport to report back within 4 weeks. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the sixth order of the day, the second reading of the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency Act, CAP P43, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 Amendment Bill 2020. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read the first time in this chamber on Saturday, 28th May 2020. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Gershom Henry Bassi to move the motion for the bill to be read the second time.
Distinguished Senator Gershom Bassi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gershom Bassi, Cross River South. Mr. President and my distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this very essential bill, which was first read on the floor of this Senate on the 28th of May 2020. The bill seeks to provide for the amendment of the Petroleum Product Pricing Agency Establishment Act to ensure the remittance of 5% user pump price of diesel and petrol for the maintenance of our roads in Nigeria. Distinguished colleagues, the Federal Road Maintenance Agency Act provides that the PPPRA shall remit 5% user pump price of diesel and petrol for road maintenance in our country. Unfortunately, 13 years after this promulgation, PPPRA has refused to remit the said 5% user pump price of diesel and petrol. As a result, over 870 billion naira is owed by PPPRA for road maintenance in our country. In Brazil, Canada, China, Israel, South Africa, and Ghana, similar specific levies are imposed by government for road maintenance. It is a fact that over 80% of goods and services are transported by road in Nigeria, leading to tremendous pressure on our roads since other modes of transportation like rail and shipping are underdeveloped. And of course, air transport is too expensive for most Nigerians. Moreover, it has been predicted that at the expiration of the COVID-19 interstate border lockdown, there will be increased traffic on our roads, occasioned by exorbitant airfares. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, FERMA needs about 210 billion naira per annum to properly maintain and restore Nigeria's road network to its original state. Regrettably, FERMA's annual proposed capital budget in 2018 was 32 billion, but less than 50% was actually released. This has been the case in the last decade. Funding for road maintenance has been so poor and comes in an unpredictable manner, creating unnecessary delays in road maintenance, which has led to the need for a total reconstruction of about 80% of Nigeria's road network. Due to bad roads, the GDP of most states in Nigeria has reduced significantly because of unnecessary increase in vehicle operating costs and dwindling road asset value. Distinguished colleagues, in the last decade, a road reconstruction expenditure of about 24 billion would have been avoided by spending just 7 billion on road maintenance. It is only road maintenance that can keep the country's road network operating indefinitely. Distinguished colleagues, the Ninth Senate needs to clearly work towards revamping the road network, which has suffered neglect over the years because of poor funding. Through this amendment bill, we will ensure that 5% user pump price of petrol and diesel accruing to road maintenance is inserted into the PPPRA expenditure templates for the purposes of our maintaining our roads. The passage of this amendment bill will enable us achieve a sustainable road maintenance culture that will ensure that our federal and state roads compete favorably with roads in developed countries. I therefore urge you, my distinguished colleagues, to support this amendment bill in its entirety. I so submit. Thank you.
Senator Tolo DB.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Tolu Odebi. I represent Ogun West. Mr. President, I rise in support of this bill ably presented by my good friend, Senator Gresham Darcy. Mr. President, the issue of the federal roads and the maintenance of them cannot be overstated. I come from the senatorial district that 75% of the roads are mostly federal roads. And the state of these roads are in the most deplorable condition. And I think it is very unfortunate that we do have an act which was promulgated and said that 5% of the road use of the pump price on diesel and petrol is supposed to be remitted for road maintenance. And having said that, nothing has been done. But I think this bill, when passed, is going to enable the firma and the federal government to be able to keep maintaining these roads and keep them in good condition. I strongly support this bill. I think it's a bill that definitely is needed. I think definitely it's going to go a long way in funding for these road maintenance, especially in light of the fact that we're not tolling most of these roads. So definitely the structure in which we have to fund this and maintain this road has to be in place, and I strongly support this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kabir Warcha.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I rise to support this very important bill. Of course, everybody knows the importance of road transport. Maybe if we go back to history, what happened, of course, why our Nigerian roads have collapsed. During the oil boom, there was no maintenance, it was only construction. Because that time, there was also no even department in the Federal Ministry of Works for the maintenance. And after some time, it was realized that, yes, maybe the roads we have will definitely collapse. And then the maintenance department was created. And of course, but nevertheless, that maintenance department was not allowed to function properly because there was a rehabilitation department, reconstruction, and also construction. So most of that time, the ministry was always after maybe construction, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. So the roads were left not maintained. And of course, what was happening, you will see that, after the budget, the Department of Maintenance have their own budget, but construction or construction, because that time it was only one director, Federal Highways. They would just put their hands and then take away the money for the maintenance and put in the reconstruction or rehabilitation. And that's why the maintenance suffered. And of course, during, President Obasanjo said, look, why the roads are failing no maintenance? There has to be something. And that was why, because of agitating for Federal Road Maintenance Agency, for Federal Highways Authority. And that was not possible. Then the president then said, okay, let's have Federal Road Authority, that's FEMA. And FEMA was established, of course, and of course it was given the mandate to maintain the federal road. So Mr. President, since the establishment of FEMA, actually there was no adequate provisions of funds to maintain the federal road, because we have a lot of federal roads that collapse that need to be maintained. And fortunately, of course, it was, as stated here, the time that, of course, this was moved, the management of FEMA approached the National Assembly at least to have an amended act so that we have this 5% from PPPRA. And the act was passed, assented, but unfortunately, the management then pursued this 5%. It was not possible to not allow them. So I think, Mr. President, now that this bill is here, I think it's very important that we should pursue this bill. But if not, we because look at least what is stated in the bill, that FEMA need at least over 200 billion to maintain these federal roads. But at the end of the day, they are only appropriated 32 billion, and this 32 billion only 50%. So could you imagine what will happen? Definitely our roads will continue to fail since we cannot maintain them. And therefore, Mr. President, because of this importance of this bill, importance of this road transport, I hereby support this bill to be passed, and also not only passed, but implemented. Thank you very much.
Senator Sandono.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sandy on Cross River Central. Mr. President, I rise to support this bill. The clarity with which the issue has been presented, the utilitarian content of the bill is very clear. Like most things in our country, there is need to screw it to the sticking place. The Act, the FEMA Act, clearly makes that stipulation. But just because the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agencies Act does not have it, they are hiding under that to refuse to comply. And the consequences are clearly very devastating. For those of us, and I think all of us are in that category, who do road transport, when you get to some points and you see the crisis and you see the trouble that citizens go through and the consequences of those troubles, you cannot hesitate but add your voice to this beautiful bill and ask that it be supported. Mr. President, I join my colleagues and the presenter of this bill to support it completely. Thank you very much.
Senator Konayaki.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Senator Konayaki, Akwa Ibom South Senatorial District. I rise to support my brother, Senator Gershom Bassi, for this beautiful bill that has been brought. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, if we will recall, in the 9th Assembly, we've been talking about road accidents, tanker accidents on the road, caused by our bad roads across the nation. And as a result, we've been losing lives, properties, and so on. And each time that comes up, the emphasis is usually on the bad roads, and that government should ensure that the roads are properly maintained. We've called severally on FEMA to do their own part and the relevant agencies. This bill, Mr. President, is looking at the source of income, because every time we'll complain the budget is not okay, it's not appropriate to enable those agencies to do their own work. And then we have a source of income revenue that should come to support the maintenance of the roads, and it's being kept aside by PPRA. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I want to lend my voice for the support of this bill to pass it and ensure that it is assented to, for PPRA to do its own part by remitting what is due for the road maintenance to help save lives and property in our nation. Thank you.
Senator Francis Alimikana.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, My name is Senator Francis Salimike, and I represent the good people of Edo North. Mr. President, I rise to support this bill, ably moved by my distinguished Senator Bessie Gershon. I support the idea of what all my colleagues have said about this bill. The maintenance of roads in Nigeria here is something that the road maintenance were given the responsibility supposed to do. If this money were given to the road maintenance agency, it would have saved the federal government from paying money to the state to repair their roads, though they have stopped it now. You could see that all the roads, all the federal roads are not even maintained. And there is a provision for it to get this money from the PPPRA. We don't know why the PPRA is taking this money and is not remitting this money to the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, which is charged with the responsibility of maintaining our roads. Mr. President, if you go from here to Auchi, Bini, and all over the country, the federal roads are very bad. A heading nation is also a heading road maintenance agency, where we have to pass our roads. And more so that after the COVID now, when the prices of most of us who fly, most of the big men who fly with planes are increased, the commoners, their only way of movement is through good roads. And if we don't have good roads, so what happens? Even before we move our products from the rural area to the city, needs a required good road. And the Federal Road Maintenance is the agency charged to maintain this road. And if they don't have money, what happens? And the money is stuck somewhere. Mr. President, it is good for us to ask why the PPPRA refused to remit this money to Federal Road Maintenance since all these 30 years when these roads have been passed. I support this bill, Mr. President.
Senator Kabilga.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I'm Kabir Gaya from Kano South, represent the people of Kano South from Kano State. Mr. President, I would like to commend Senator Bassi for bringing this bill. I knew during the 8th Senate, we had a lot of problems with the PPRA in trying to remit the funds due to FEMA based on the FEMA Act, which clearly stipulated that 5% of the farm price should be given to FEMA under the chart or the template produced by PPRA. We invited them to our committee at that time. There was an outstanding balance of over $700 billion at that time. And we invited all the agency officers of PPRA. The major complaint was that, yeah, they know the law, they have to respect the law, but in their own template that they share the funds of the crude, the road tax is not included. So by bringing this bill, now we amend their template, and that will force them to be able to remit that funds. And it rises out to the issue of controversy in this country that the Senate wanted to increase fuel price. And we said no, we had to defend ourselves. So therefore, if you amend the act now, it is the PPIS Act and they will have to comply. So I support this bill raised by Senator Bassi, and that is a good one, and I think it's a straightforward one. That will help in enhancing our 34,000 kilometers of Nigerian roads that need maintenance. It will certainly reduce the budget of Ministry of Works if there is maintenance on this road. So I support this bill, and we thank Bassi for bringing it up. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against, say nay. The ayes have it. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency Act, CAP 43, LFN, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, and for related matters 2020, second reading.
A bill for an act to amend the Petroleum Product Pricing Regulatory Agency Act, CAP 43, LFN, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, 2004, and for related matters 2020, second reading taken, and the bill is referred to the Senate Committee on Petroleum Resources downstream to report back within 4 weeks. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the seventh order of the day is a motion standing in the name of distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi and distinguished Senator Mpigi Barinada on the need to intervene in the mysterious deaths in Bonny Island, River State. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi to move the motion.
Distinguished Senator Betty Jocelyn Apiafi.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Betty Apiafi. I represent Rivers West. I'm from Rivers State. Mr. President, the motion is on the need to intervene in the mysterious deaths in Bonny Island, Rivers State. The Senate recalls that in the last week of March 2020, there were incidents of large quantities of dead fish around the Bonny and Donish shores, and indeed several coastal communities along the Atlantic shoreline in the Niger Delta region, stretching from Rivers State, Bayelsa, Delta, Akwa Ibom, and Ondo states. The Senate is aware that less than 6 weeks after the mysterious deaths, less than 6 weeks later, mysterious deaths have been occurring in Bonny Island in Rivers State, and is reported to have claimed, as at the time I was doing this motion last week, it was 13, but it's more than 13 lives now. The Senate is further aware that officials of the Rivers State Ministry of Health and the Nigerian Center for Disease Control have collected samples in Bonny Island, Rivers State, for testing to determine what is responsible for the strange occurrence, which has defined the symptoms to include loss of sense of smell, taste, fever, weakness, vomiting, and stooling. The Senate knows that Bonny is the home of the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas, LNG, and various multinational companies, including the Royal Dutch, Shell, Mobil, Chevron, Ajib, and ELF. The high population of foreign staff from different countries makes Bonny a high-risk community for COVID-19. Reports have it from Rivers State that 60% of the COVID-19 patients are from the oil and gas industry. The Senate is further aware that Bonny Island is a major export point in the oil and gas industry. It hosts the single largest gas investment in the country, the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas, NLNG. The plant with 6 trains, and the $10 billion contract for Train 7 was recently signed in December 2019, and Train 7 is expected to raise $20 billion revenue for the federal government. The Senate observed that despite the significant contribution of Bonny to the nation's economy as a major revenue source, the island only access is by boats and ferries, and there is no link road connecting the island to other parts of Rivers State and Nigeria. The island also lacks adequate medical facilities. The Senate is also worried that due to the challenges of transportation and communication, it is usually difficult to get help or even access medical facilities in Port Harcourt and other parts of the country. The Senate is further worried that if the health issue is not contained, it could affect the residents and workforce of the international oil companies, IOCs, as well as the economy of the country, and could also spread from there to other parts of the country, especially in this global pandemic. Accordingly, the Senate resolves to 1. Task the Committee on Health to meet with the Nigerian Center for Disease Control with a view of receiving a brief from NCDC on their findings in Bonny for necessary intervention of other relevant government agencies and further legislative action, and report to the Senate within 2 weeks. Urge NEMA to provide necessary relief material to the people of Bonny Island. 3rd, task the Senate Committee on Environment to meet with NOSTRA and other relevant agencies to ensure reduction of marine pollution of all kinds, particularly from land-based activities along the Atlantic shorelines, and report to the Senate within 2 weeks. And also call on the federal government to establish a federal medical center in Bonny. And finally, task the Senate Committee on Works to meet with the federal government, to meet with the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing and other relevant agencies to liaise with the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas, NLNG, to use the road infrastructure tax credit against NLNG income tax to enable speedy completion of the Bonny-Bodo Road due to the dwindling government revenue. I so move.
Senator Baranadam Bigi.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. Mr. President, the motion as ably moved by distinguished Senator Betty Afiafi is not only being a straightforward motion, but it's a motion that has to do with sympathy. Mr. President, Bonny is an island, and the number of people that are staying in Bonny, they are all Nigerians. People from all walks of life stays in that island. The only likelihood and the major way of occupation that you can turn the Bonny people to put over 99% of their means of livelihood is in fishing. Mr. President, the motion mentioned maybe about 15 persons. Just yesterday, in Opobo, the next community to Bonny, we lost about 7 persons also, just as a result of this issue. Because when you ask the NCDC to actually come out whether it is COVID or it was COVID, the result that they produce is just maybe because of poison. Mr. President, this motion is straightforward, and whatever that affects Bonny affects the whole Niger Delta. Mr. President, all the necessary requests and of course all the results she has added is real, and I want everybody to support this motion, because if anything happened to the people in Bonny the way it is going, I think our likelihood with the liquefied natural gas, our likelihood and of course support with all the multinationals that are staying there, a lot of things will happen to this country. Mr. President, I support this motion wholeheartedly and ask the whole Senate to also support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Nicholas Tofomo.
My distinguished colleagues, Bonny Island is a centrifugal force of our economy in this country. Bonny is one of the largest producers of crude oil and gas in Nigeria. The center of multinational oil companies like Shell, Mobil, Chevron, Ajib, and Earth. These companies are just exploring resources without adding significant development to Bonny. Bonny Island is in a mess where people are dying regularly, and the habitats are dying as well in the sea. There is the possibility of this embarrassment to spread along the coastal areas, even to my senatorial district. I'm from Ondo South Senatorial District. NCDC does not have resources to sort out the anomalies in Bonny Island and the neighboring towns. Bonny Island is not linked to any part of the country through transport, like roads our railways. And billions of naira is generated from that part of the country. So I will strongly suggest that the federal government should declare Bonny as a disaster and also set up a strong body that will regenerate and resuscitate Bonny, because Bonny has a big role to play in Nigeria. Thank you.
Senator Konaki.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Senator Akoni Yahi, Akwebon South Senatorial District. My President, I want to join my colleagues to appreciate distinguished Senator Betty Apiafi for bringing up this motion. It's a fact that dead fishes were first seen in Bonny Island. Mr. President, as we all know, the Niger Delta water flows from one state to the other. Recently, about 3 weeks ago, we had the same flow of dead fishes on the shores of Ibno Beach. The unfortunate and the alarming thing, Mr. President, is that the villagers, when they see these fishes come that way, they will rush to gather it and dry it and sell.
Mr. President, I rise to raise this point of order for this distinguished Senate to suspend its Order 13 in order to enable us to take the next motion after this one. I so move.
Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the motion that we suspend Order 13 to enable the Senate sit beyond 2 p.m. say aye. Those against say nay. Ayes have it. Continue, Senator Yeki.
Thank you, Mr. President. The effect of getting this poisoned fish to dry and then sold to the people is a major issue. We are fighting the coronavirus pandemic, and this one is coming up again to join, which will put the nation, particularly the Niger Delta, into a very terrible situation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this is a very clear case motion that I want to strongly support, that the 5 resolutions recommended should be adopted. And in addition, when that time comes, I'll have another prayer to add. We have to do something to save our people from dying, to identify what is the cause of these fishes dying in their number. And specifically, it is only one species of fish. It does not affect all. Maybe later, when the bigger fishes will now start eating up the smaller ones, the effect will be across board. So I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Cross River South. Mr. President, I rise to support this motion wholeheartedly. I think one thing that the current corona pandemic has taught us is that we should not joke with our health issues. And a situation where you have mysterious deaths, particularly in an area that is one of the pillars of our economy, I don't think we should take it lightly. Bonny Island is, as most of my colleagues have expressed, is key to the nation's economy. And some of the issues that Senator Betty has brought up here are quite frightening. I therefore want to support her motion wholeheartedly and urge that we immediately swing into action. the executive should immediately swing into action and try to unravel this mystery that is going on in Bonny Island. Thank you very much.
We'll go to the prayers. Prayer 1. Task the Senate Committee on Health to meet with Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, in view of receiving a brief from the NCDC on their findings in Bonny for necessary intervention of other relevant government agencies and further legislative action, and report to the Senate within 2 weeks. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2. Urge the NEMA to provide necessary relief materials to the people of Bonny Island. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Task the Senate Committee on Environment to meet with NOSDRA and other relevant agencies to ensure reduction of marine pollution of all kinds, particularly from land-based activities along the Atlantic shoreline, and report this to the Senate within 2 weeks. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 4. Call on the federal government to establish a federal medical center in Bonny. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And prayer 5. Task the Senate Committee on Works to meet with the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing and other relevant agencies to liaise with Nigerian LNG to use road infrastructure tax credit against the LNG's income tax to enable speedy completion of the Bonny-Bodo Road due to dwindling government revenue. Those in favor of prayer 5 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Leader of the Senate. Additional prayer, Senator Akwanyeke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to urge the Senate Committee on Health and Environment, in collaboration with relevant agencies, to undertake a study to find out the causes of the dead fishes.
Yes, Seconda. Senator Kola Borogu.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I rise to support the amendment to this motion as ably moved by Senator.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, my highly respected and distinguished colleagues, the eighth order of the day is a motion standing in the name of distinguished Senator Obon Christopher Stephen Ekpenyo and 25 others on the urgent need to revive the moribund paper mill in Nigeria. Mr. President, you may wish to invite distinguished Senator Christopher Stephen Ekpenyo to move the motion.
Senator Christopher Stephen Ekpenyo.
Mr. President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues, my name is Christopher Stephen Ekpenyo, an engineer by profession, representing the good people of Akwa Ibom Northwest. Mr. President of the Senate, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. After 2 instances of moving this motion, and it was subdued, but today that I've gained favor from you and my distinguished colleagues to move this motion, which is very apt. I go straight to the motion. The Senate is persuaded to note that the Nigeria's 3 paper mills, Nigeria Paper Mill, NPM,
Kwara State, Nigeria Newspaper or Newsprint Manufacturing Company, NMC, Akwa Ibom State, and Nigeria National Paper Manufacturing Company, NNPMC, Ogun State. I'm sure that is in Open. Were established by the federal government in the 1960s and 1970s to produce corrugated cartons, sackcraft paper, craft paper, linear and chipboard, as well as floating media to meet the country's needs in writing and printing papers. This Senate further notes that these paper mills were privatized by the federal government as a result of lack of adequate funds to run them and non-performance, hence the redirection of the management into private hands through privatization to ensure effective and profitable management. Aware that paper production is one of the major industrial activities regarded as a pointer to industrialization and education and educational development worldwide, making the sector a major booster to our economy and national development. Observe that the sector has gone moribund since privatization, leaving the country with another huge income deficit. The companies who bought these mills either abandoned them or not being able to revive them to full capacity, making the country to depend on imported papers. The Senate worried by the recent statistics released by the Raw Material Research and Development Council, which indicates that Nigeria lost over 800 billion naira annually to paper importation, while the Printers Association of Nigeria put the figure at $1 trillion US dollars annually through the importation of over 1 million metric tons of paper at a cost of $1,000 American dollars per ton. Recalls with nostalgia that these mills formerly had a workforce of over 300,000 people and an investment worth 100 billion naira before the privatization policy by the federal government. Concerned that the unhealthy state of the printing industry is adversely affecting the education sector, statistics show that over 100 million books are required annually in the country for the 20 million students in schools. And by the national book policy, 5 books are the requirement set for people. 75% of these books are printed outside the country. This is because printers make more money printing abroad, in that the duty on the importation of published books is 0%, while importation of paper as raw materials into the country is up to 30%. Further worried that the result of the non-performance of the paper mills is the missed opportunity for job creation in the sector. This amounts to a loss for the Nigerian economy. If these paper mills are working, thousands of Nigerians will be actively employed working in these mills. Books and paper needed by students would have been cheaper since they are produced locally. Sorry. Yes.
accordingly resolved. Sorry. Accordingly, this Senate resolves to mandate the Senate Committee on Privatization to investigate the activities and operations of the mills and report back to the Senate. 2, urge the Chartered Institute of Professional Printers of Nigeria, SIPON, and Nigeria Customs Service to review duty on importation of published books and importation of paper as raw materials into the country and make it favorable to prints locally in Nigeria. 3, urge the federal government to establish free paper mills in each geopolitical zones of the country to boost paper production, economic growth, and employment opportunities in the country. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Sadiq Umar Suleiman.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I am Sadiq Sulaiman Umar. I represent the good and decent people of Kwara North. Mr. President, I rise to second the motion that there is need to revive the moribund paper mills in Nigeria. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I'm interested in this motion and I became a co-sponsor because this directly affects my constituency. The Jeba paper mills used to be a major employer in my senatorial district, where youth, young graduates get employment. But today, unemployment has been increased because this paper mill is moribund. Aside the fact that Bashida's Sugar Company, who is a major employer of labor in my senatorial zone, is also moribund. And what did we get? Poverty, trouble for the young men, and in my senatorial zone, all efforts the people are making, they are not able to cross the poverty line because opportunities of employment does not exist because of these industries being moribund. Mr. President, we know that paper is an essential commodity. Education daily, even in the chamber, we use papers daily, and we are not manufacturing papers in our country. The more we import these papers, the more we are exporting jobs that our young men should benefit to other countries. And this, Mr. President, I think we have to reverse this trend. I therefore urge us all to support this motion. Thank you.
Senator Sani Musa.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Muhammad Sani Musa, representing Niger East Senatorial District. I rise to support this motion wholeheartedly because Nigeria is missing, especially when it comes to paper importation. Nigeria is one of the highest countries that import papers. Meanwhile, we have the raw materials, we have everything here. We used to have about 4 paper manufacturing industries. We used to have it in Jaba, we have in Ogun State, European, and we have in Oku, Iboku. Both the combination of this, we used to produce close to about 200,000 metric tons. Meanwhile, the demand in Nigeria is over 2 million metric tons per annum. INEC, during general elections alone, imports over 250,000 tons of printed paper. Imagine if that is done in Nigeria. We produce the paper in Nigeria, we produce the printing materials in Nigeria, we have the printing machines in Nigeria, we save money. Annually, we spend close to about 720 billion naira in the importations of paper in this country. If the government will initiate and not allow it to be like what we are seeing with the discourse today, because discourse has become part of the problem of the paper industry. Because there is no energy, no power, hence the production, even to cut the pulp, to get the raw material, you need power these days. You need to power it. So I think this is a very good motion, and I believe that if we will put it right, we need these papers, especially for the education sector. You can imagine textbooks, most of the textbooks our secondary schools, primary schools, or even the tertiary institutions are using are imported. Why should we be doing that? So I rise to support this motion. If we rehabilitate our printing, paper manufacturing industry, we'll be able to save close to about $3 billion annually. And this will go a long way in bringing back our needs, especially in the educational sector, and also save this country from spending so much, enhancing the industries abroad, and also killing our own here at home. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Sunday Ono.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Sunday Ono, Cross River Central. Mr. President, this motion, distinguished Senator His Excellency Chris Ekpenyong, for his thoughtfulness. Mr. President, there are a couple of issues this motion throws up. The first issue is the critical need to overhaul our privatization processes in this country. These were mills that may not have been doing too well, government having to run them. And with the general philosophy of privatization as the best way out, as a means of ensuring efficiency and effectiveness, they were privatized. No sooner were they privatized that they collapsed abysmally. It speaks clearly to the issue that a lot of our privatization processes leave so much to be desired, and calls on all of us to be more sensitive, to be more concerned about the privatization processes. Because if we look at it very clearly and deeply, factors other than efficiency and effectiveness characterize some of these privatization processes. Even now, we are victims of such processes, because if you look at the light situation in this country, not much has been done. People bid for these government facilities more for profit than for efficiency and effectiveness. This motion throws to the fore the need for us to so review these processes. The other issue is the accompanying issue of unemployment. I remember when the Okuiboku mill, for instance, was functioning. Just as Senator Ekpenyong has said, the workforce, the activities, the forward and backward linkages that attended the operations of this paper mill are such that the collapse has such devastating consequences on the social and economic lives of many Nigerians. Mr. President, this matter also throws up really the question, what can we produce in this country? If we cannot even produce paper, what then can we produce? If we can produce toothpicks, what then can we produce? I think fundamental to the problem of this country is lack of productivity. Our having to export almost everything is at the root of the economic crisis we're having. Mr. President, I want to join Senator Ekpenyong to call on all relevant authorities regarding this matter to please sit up and look for ways and means of revitalizing our paper industry in this country. With this, I support this motion wholeheartedly and completely. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Kola Bologun.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I rise to support this motion. First and foremost, because of the need to create an employment, and this motion has the potential to do that. Because of the need to generate additional revenue to government coffers, which we badly need. Because of the potential of this motion to support our educational development. Mr. President, if all this is done, and of course, the logical extension of all of this will be to reduce the crime rate and to grow the economy. Mr. President, I'm supporting this motion with the same spirit that I have supported the need to revive our textile industry. I'm supporting this motion with the same spirit and with the need to promote small and medium-scale enterprises in this country. But all these measures, even though they're in the right direction, but they seem to me as if they are short-term solution to our economic development. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we need to really pay serious attention to the revival of power sector in this country. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing, no amount of investment you put in any of these sectors, whether it's textile industry, whether it's paper mill, if we don't fix our power sector, we'll be chasing shadows and we'll go right in circle. So, Mr. President, I'm happy that this next Senate is already doing something through the Committee on Power to try and do something about revival of our power sector. We need to do that. We need to invest on road infrastructure so that even if we revive our textile industry, our paper mill, on a temporary measure, at the end of the day, the long-term solution will be to find solution to our power sector. And therefore, with that, in that spirit, Mr. President, I rise to wholeheartedly support this motion, and I urge my colleagues to do so. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Fadonsi, finally.
Mr. President, I once again rise to support the motion on the reviving the paper mills all over the country. There are a lot of disadvantages that have been caused by the death of all these paper mills that were established in 1960s, 1970s, and finally during Sagari's era, 1980s. A lot of employment opportunities were provided, and at the time, they were encouraged to establish paper mills here and there because there were surpluses of valuable thick forest, thick wood, and most of everywhere was with valuable forest. But unfortunately, in the advent of military takeover, most of these valuable forests in Ondo, Ogun State, Akwa Ibom were all given out by the military guys then to the Indians and the Chinese. And before we came back to the civilian era, the whole thing was gone. So that was the sudden death of all our paper mills because there were not enough materials to supply them. So we now resorted to massive importation. And then we have been in trouble since then. My own suggestion today is we have to go all out for massive plantations of all the valuable trees in all the regions. It has to be compulsory, so that before we now revive all this, we have enough raw material to supply the new ones and the old ones we are reviving. Because even if we revive them now, there are no trees to supply for manufacturing. The remaining part of the trees are being used for producing coal, which were used for mass export of coal into other countries. Now that we have that, the unemployment level will go a lot, will come down. Because those factories that were dead, they employed more than millions of Nigerians, including both technical and lower cadre. So I support the motion that it has to be seriously looked into if we want to engage our youth, if we want to have foreign exchange conserved, and if we want to have real good GDP. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. We'll go to the prayers. Prayer 1, mandate the Senate Committee on Privatization to investigate the activities and operations of the mills and report back to the Senate. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, urge the Chartered Institute of Professional Printers of Nigeria, SIPON, and Nigeria Customs Service to review duty on importation of published books and importation of paper as raw materials into the country and make it favorable to print locally in Nigeria. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. And prayer 3, urge the federal government to establish federal paper mills in each geopolitical zones of the country to boost paper production, economic growth, and employment opportunities in the country. Distinguished Echo, I think why, let me just remain seated. My understanding of the paper industry is it is fully privatized because the federal government couldn't handle the mills with efficiency, and therefore it handed over to private investors. I don't think we need the federal government now to come back and start establishing paper mills in each geopolitical zone because we don't have the resources and we failed in management as well. So I don't know whether this particular, do you still want us to take this? What I'm saying is they have been privatized. No, let me say this. They are not government things. So this is private investment. And someone could decide to invest in one place, 10 industries. This is up to him. Okay. Okay, I will put the question. Urge the federal government to establish federal paper mills in each geopolitical zones of the country to boost paper production, economic growth, and employment opportunities in the country. Those in favor of this prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The nays have it. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. All our paper mills have been privatized. And in the 7th Senate, we investigated the public enterprises that were privatized. And we visited, is it Okuboku in Akwa Ibom, the paper mill. And of course, what we need to do, like our first prayer said, we need to investigate, first of all, get BPE, our Committee on Privatization, should get BPE, because our government and the investors, the private investors, signed share purchase agreements. How far are those private investors who took over the control of our paper mills are compliant with the signed share purchase agreements? Many of them, you will find out, have simply not complied. These are agreements on the basis of which we surrendered our common patrimony. So our committee on privatization should be able to do that where these companies have failed or these investors have failed to move the paper mill industry forward. Government should know what to do. But it's extremely important that we save the very scarce foreign exchange that we spend so much in importation, and of course we also in the process export our job opportunities to other countries. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, I rise to move a motion for this distinguished Senate to step down consideration of all other items on the order paper to another legislative day. I so move.
Honorable Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor of the prayer or the motion by the Senate Leader that we stand down the consideration of the remaining items on the order paper till another legislative day say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The distinguished colleagues, the Senate is hereby adjourned till tomorrow, Wednesday, the 10th day of June 2020 at 10 a.m. prompt.